by His Divine Grace A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada. Well, I guess I can get it out of the computer. You got it? Yeah, 2024. Text 205. Okay, I'll read it. Krishna Kripadi Hetu Hoite Shobha Rudoy Krishna Guna Krishna Hoya Tahare Bhajoy. Everyone is eligible to receive Krishna's mercy, including Vyasadeva, the four Kumaras, Shukdev Goswami, low-born creatures, trees, plants and beasts. By Krishna's mercy they are elevated and engaged in his service. Purport: this is confirmed in the Bhagavad Gita, wherein the Lord says, Manhi partha vyapashritya yepi syuf papa yonayaha striyo vaishyas tata shudras tepi yanti param gatim. O son of Pritha, those who take shelter in me, though they be of lower birth, women, vaishyas, merchants, and shudras, workers, can attain this supreme destination. Everyone is eligible to become Krishna's devotee. One simply has to be trained according to the approved process. It is the work of Krishna's confidential devotees to turn everyone into a Krishna bhakta. If the confidential devotees do not take up the task of elevating everyone to Krishna consciousness, then who will do it? Those who claim to be devotees but do not engage in Krishna's service to elevate all living creatures to Krishna consciousness are to be considered kanishta adhikaris, people in the lowest stage of devotional service. When one rises to the second platform of devotional service, his business is to propagate Krishna consciousness all over the world. Those who are active in the Krishna consciousness movement should not remain in the neophyte stage, but should rise to the platform of preachers, the second platform of devotional service. Devotional service is so enchanting that even the first-class devotees, Uttama Adhikaris, also come down to the second platform to preach and render service to the Lord for the benefit of the whole world. Om Jnanatirandhasya Jnananjana Shalakaya Chakshurmilitam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha. Nama Shrishtam Nama Pishat Chiputramatra Surupam Rupam Tasyagrajam Urupurim Bhaturim Goshtavatim Radha Kundam Girivaramaho Radhika Madhavasham Prapto Yasya Pratita Kripaya Shri Gurum Tam Natosmi Vandeham Shri Guru Shriyatav Padakamalam Shri Gurun Vaishnavangscha Shri Rupam Sagrajatam Sahagana Raghunatam Vitam Tam Sajivam Sadvaitam Savadhutam Parijana Sahitam Krishna Chaitanya Devam Shri Radha Krishna Padan Sahagana Lalita Shri Vishakhan Vitamscha. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. So this verse states that everyone can become a devotee. Everyone can become attracted to Krishna. In the purport, Srila Prabhupada takes up the theme, well, if everyone can, then devotees, those who are already in the devotional service of the Lord, they should take that up, take up the mission of the Lord to help others come to Krishna consciousness. And that's why Srila Prabhupada came to the Western world, worked so hard, sent his disciples out, once some people came to be his disciples, had them also work hard, wrote books, and had his disciples distribute the books, And that's going on now. What's the reason? Why all this business of sending everyone out to distribute books? Well, the idea is to, as Srila Prabhupada writes here, the idea is to turn everyone into a Krishna Bhakta. And if we don't take up that mission to help others take devotional service, then we remain on the lowest stage of devotional service. So this preaching is for wanting to uplift the fallen, the Kanishta Adhikaris. They're only interested in their own advancement. Archayameva haraye puja yah shradhaye hate na tad chanyeshu bhakteshu sabhakta prakrita smitaha. They're devotees but with a material conception. They think it's me and I do my puja and I'm happy and that's all. And the Madhyamadikari devotee, Ishvaretad adhineshu balisheshu dvishatshu cha prema maitri kripopeksha yakaroti samadhyama. A person who is a Madhyamadikari devotee, he sees there's God and he loves him. There are devotees and he's friendly with them. There are the innocent and he's merciful to them. And the envious and he avoids them. So as Prabhupada writes in this purport, if the confidential devotees do not take up the task of elevating everyone to Krishna consciousness, then who will do it? The neophyte devotees aren't going to do it. And you may say, well, the confidential devotees, they're so confidential that Bhagavat Bhavam, they see everyone, Sarva Bhuteshu Yat Pashed Bhagavat Bhavavat Manaha. Bhuteshu Bhagavat Yatman Bhagavat Uttama. The topmost devotee sees everyone's a devotee. They're all devotees. He doesn't see there are non-devotees. So Srila Prabhupada writes here in this purport that this devotional service of bringing others to Krishna consciousness is so enchanting that even the topmost devotees come down to the second platform to preach and render this service to the Lord. So that's why the books are being distributed. And we may send out devotees we may think, well, they're just quite low level, not very advanced. This is meant for confidential devotees to preach like this. But those who take up this Sankirtan mission, by the very fact of doing that, they come to a better level. Of course, in a neophyte stage, one may distribute these books and be thinking about, well, anyway, I'm doing it, not exactly sure why, but anyway, or some idea of being seen as a better top devotee, better book distributor than others, or maybe dovetailing some propensity for salesmanship or whatever. But whatever motives one may have, mixed motives, by doing this, then Krishna blesses us, and we have to pray to Krishna to distribute these books. And one comes to a better level of devotional service. One becomes advanced by distributing these books. So why are we distributing these books? So that people can become devotees by reading them. And the immediate answer, why are you giving people books? Well, the obvious thing is so that they can read them. That's the obvious thing. If you give someone some fruit, the idea is that they can eat it. So it's an obvious thing, so they can read it. And by reading, they'll get knowledge of Krishna and the inspiration to be Krishna conscious. We're also supposed to read the books ourselves. It's almost absurd if we're going to so much effort to distribute the books so that others can read them, and we don't read them ourselves. We should read them more than others. Otherwise, why are we working so hard? That means we're so inspired that others will read the books, then we ourselves should be most inspired. And if we do read the books, then we become more inspired to distribute them. Sometimes Srila Prabhupada, he mentioned that because Prabhupada had pushed his disciples so much to distribute the books, but he sometimes lamented almost that my disciples are working so hard, they're distributing the books, and he was pleased with that, but they're not reading the books. And Srila Prabhupada would often give impromptu tests to his disciples and ask them, what is that verse? Or ask them some philosophical question. And Prabhupada could understand that whether or not devotees were reading the books. It wasn't, of course, often, more than anyone who traveled with Srila Prabhupada was Pradyumna, who Srila Prabhupada called Panditji. And often when he was there, devotees would expect him to quote the verse or whatever, but Prabhupada made it clear it wasn't just meant for him. In fact, anyone who, especially those who have this string on their shoulder and are called Brahmins, they should know the books. Srila Prabhupada said that devotees, his disciples, should know the books as just like a lawyer knows his books. It means the lawyer, if he has to know what's in the books very well, otherwise he can't practice as a lawyer. You can't be a lawyer if you just have a library, or if you might be a legal books salesman. Even then you have to have some knowledge of what's in the books. But to practice as a lawyer, you have to know what's in the books. And how do you know what's in the books? You have to read them. And you have to read them very carefully. To be a lawyer, it's not just a matter of reading it as some kind of entertainment. Most of the books, it seems nowadays, that are written, they're written as some kind of entertainment, silly novels, biographies, maybe semi-educational, education in useless things. But the idea is all these magazines, newspapers even, it's some kind of entertainment. But a technical manual or a legal book or a book on medicines, you have to read it very carefully and understand it very well. Otherwise you can't be successful as a lawyer, and you can't be a doctor unless you really understand what's in the book. So Srila Prabhupada, he also said that we shouldn't just read the books, but we should study them and try to understand scrutinizingly. These are the words he used. Scrutinize, study them scrutinizingly. And if we do that, we'll find that how rich they are. Even though Srila Prabhupada wrote, in a manner, his linguistic style was very simple, but the depth, in every line, we can't find the bottom. Just like if you go to Naimisharanya, there's the Chakra Tirtha. There's a well of, you know about that? It's so deep. How deep is it? It's unfathomable. You can't find the bottom, that's the literal meaning of unfathomable. So everything in these books is so deep, and you can relate everything. You can find everything in the world is described through the lens of these books. We can understand everything and therefore become Shastra Chakshu. Have this Shastra as our eyes, Jnana Chakshu. These different words are used. Pashanti Jnana Chakshusha. Ukramantang stitang vapi bhunjanam va gunanvitam. Vimura nanu pashanti jnana chakshusha. That word, the eye of knowledge. One who has the eye of knowledge, he can see, he can understand how a living being is going from one body to another and so-called enjoying and suffering in different bodies under the modes of nature. But a foolish person who doesn't have the eye of knowledge cannot see this. So these books give us the eye of knowledge, and we want to give that to others, which Srila Prabhupada wants these books widely distributed, so we make the effort to pass them out. The main factor in passing out these books, what's the technique? What does it do? What do we have to do to distribute the books? What do you say to people? Well, what we say to people is important, but most important is our own appreciation of the books and the knowledge in them, and that will be communicated to others. People will pick up on that. If they otherwise they may just think we're some book salesman. You're going in the trains distributing books. There are so many people selling so many things on the trains, but obviously it's a business, and they don't claim it to be. It's understood it's a business, whether they're selling. What do they sell? All kinds of trinkets and food items. Sometimes they sell books, magazines, more likely. So why should people be interested in some philosophical books? They want that. They want on the train. They want something. If at all they want anything to read, on the train it's for time pass. I don't know if you say that in Tamil. You say that also? Yeah, it's actually you don't say it in English. It's some kind of concocted English which has entered Indian languages. So for passing the time. But something heavy, philosophical, people in general don't want that. They're lazy. That's one of the symptoms of Kali Yuga. People are lazy. There's mental laziness also, where you just don't want to. You don't want to plan your mind because it's too much effort. There's physical laziness, just like you might not. Oh, I don't want to walk 1 kilometer. I'll take a taxi. Just laziness. You can walk 1 kilometer easily, you're in no hurry, but you're just... So it's physical laziness. But there's also mental laziness. You might have experienced, if you go back to those horrible days at school, I don't know if you've experienced them as horrible, but there may be some mathematics problem. And if you apply your mind to it, you can solve it, but it's a lot of work and you just don't feel like doing it. You really have to think. So, don't want to do it. Then you have to do it. Yeah. So there's the mental laziness also. Or maybe some difficult passage in some writing, and you could try and understand it, but you just don't bother. Why? Because it's an effort. It's an effort to apply the mind to try to understand. Srila Prabhupada said we should try to understand, scrutinize, understand from all different angles of vision. But mostly people don't want to do that. They don't want to apply their mind to some heavy philosophy. In the Western world they have these parties, and the whole idea is, or anyone, you just meet someone, just like you meet someone, just like on a plane, and if you're in the Western plane, someone might start talking to you, especially in America, not so much in Europe. They just start talking to you, and it's time pass, but they don't want to have heavy discussion. It might be intellectual, but not really heavy. They don't want any heavy discussion. But it's heavy. Guru. Srila Prabhupada's books are non-different from him. They're guru. They're heavy. So people, they're not likely to want this, but it's the devotee who is a heavy person. Himself is heavy with knowledge and bright with knowledge. He wants to communicate that to others. His desire has to be stronger than the desire of the non-devotee who doesn't want to take the book. Desire is very powerful. as Krishna states in Bhagavad Gita, that Indriyani pranyahur indriyebhya parang manaha manasastu parabudhe yobudhe paratastu saha. There is the platform of the senses, the platform of the senses, physical senses, the platform of the mental platform, the intellectual platform, and highest of all, or strongest of all, is the platform of desire. Desire is so strong it can even control Krishna. The desire of the devotees can overwhelm even the desire of Krishna. The desire of the devotees to glorify the Supreme Lord can overwhelm the desire of the Lord to hide His glories, as we find sometimes in the pastimes of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. So desire is very strong. The kamis, some of them, they have this idea, if you just desire something, you can get it. If you just sit at home and desire to be a billionaire, you can get it. Well, it doesn't work like that. Some effort has to be there also. And some eligibility also. But there are so many books, beginning with this Think and Grow Rich by Napoleon Hill, which is all based on, after that there have been dozens of books based on the idea, you have to fix your desire, and then what? Then based on that desire, you can be what you desire. Actually, that's our philosophy also. You become what you desire. Of course, it's a lot more complex than just desiring, but it begins with desire. So the desire of the devotee is very strong because he sees that people are suffering without knowledge of Krishna, and he knows that these books can bring them to Krishna. This is the best way to bring them to Krishna. So his desire to give them to the non-devotee is very strong. Of course, it's not that every non-devotee takes a book. You can't force them. They have to be somewhat pious or somewhat interested in some way or other. There has to be some spark, but the devotee, those who are not so interested, then Krishna gives the intelligence to the devotee to say the right thing at the right time to the right person, so it just inspires them to take that book. And those who are reading the books, they can, then they become in touch with Krishna, who is manifested not only Krishna but all the great personalities. Srila Prabhupada writes in the first canto of Bhagavatam about Narad Muni. He says, who has so kindly manifested himself in the pages of the Bhagavatam. You remember reading that? It's quite an amazing statement. He's here. Prabhupada, obviously when he was writing this was at Radha Damodar temple in Vrindavan before he came to the West. He experienced that Narad Muni is present here. And he made that point. He wrote it down. Narad Muni is present in this, right here, in the pages, in the text and in the purport. He's personally present. So devotee connects with this. Knowing that these people, in one sense, they're not really qualified. Who's qualified? Who is qualified for these books? Paramahamsa. This Srimad Bhagavatam is meant for the Paramahamsas. Paramahamsa Sanghita. Yasmin Paramahamsyam. Egamamalam Jnanam Parangiyate. The knowledge in here is meant for the Paramahamsas. And most people, they are like crows. If you want to sell a lot of books, really a lot of books, then you bring some pornographic book. People, they like it. Of course, they might be embarrassed to buy it in front of anyone else. But people, they're more interested. On the internet, I'm told, the most popular thing is pornography, not Krishna. So people are interested in garbage, vayasam tirtam. People are interested in books and whatever else is all filthy, because they're like crows. And these books are meant for paramahamsas. So the effort is there to take the crow-like people to the platform of paramahamsas. That's possible by the mercy of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. So Srila Prabhupada said that the books are the basis of our movement in so many ways. The basis of the preaching, the basis of everything we do, the basis of our own devotional life. We can have a big temple, big beautiful temple, but if the basis, well, let's take this two ways. One thing is a building. You can have a big building, but if it looks very good, but if the foundation isn't strong, it'll fall down very soon. There may be very elaborately painted murals on the walls, but it all crumble and crack very soon if the foundation is not strong. So in the same way, we can have a very beautiful temple. But if the foundation, its temple is built out of bhakti, but if it's bhakti to, say, Sai Baba, then it's all useless. Sometimes we see that these temples are built, and you see some temple, oh, that looks very nice. What is that temple? Oh, Sai Baba temple. Then you don't want to go in. You think, oh, it looks very nice. I should go to that temple and visit, because it's built so nicely. But it's with Sai Baba. The basis is completely useless, worse than useless. So why we're doing all this? The people are building temples out of a Sai Baba temple means they're building it out of a perverted reflection of actual bhakti. So it's not real bhakti. So it's not the building itself. The building should be a manifestation of actual bhakti. And that actual bhakti is communicated to the world by Krishna through the Vedic literature. And through the devotees, of course, they are the mouthpiece of the Vedic literature. But the Shastra is the basis. Guru Sadhu Shastra. The sadhus and the gurus, they're the ones who deliver the Shastra, but it's the Shastra which is the center. Otherwise one can be a guru or a sadhu, the same thing. If you don't have a Shastric basis, then you're not really a guru or a sadhu. The Shastra is the center. We can understand who's an actual sadhu throughout all the ages, because they all say the same thing. All the real sadhus, they all say the same thing, which is the message of the Shastra. It doesn't change. So books are the base, knowledge is the basis, the knowledge of the Vedas, which is manifested at the present time in the world, primarily through the books of Srila Prabhupada, which you're all working so hard to distribute. Books are the basis, particularly Srila Prabhupada's books, but there should be so many other books produced also, but all on the basis of what has been given to us in Srila Prabhupada's books. Some people have this idea that, well, we shouldn't write any more books, Prabhupada's books are enough. But rather the opposite, there should be millions of books written, because that is natural that a devotee, when he gets his knowledge, he wants to glorify it and expand it. So there may be so many books written, but the benchmark or the basis, the standard, is the knowledge that we get in Srila Prabhupada's books. Another way, there's so many ways the books are the basis, is that we have these classes every day in these temples on Srila Prabhupada's order, and again, books are the basis. Srila Prabhupada's books. We should speak on following what is in those books. not anything else. That is our standard. We may say so many things, but it all has to be clearly on the basis of what we've received in those books. If it's something different, it's bogus. Must be following. So this point should be understood by all members of Srila Prabhupada's International Society for Krishna Consciousness. Unless we keep the knowledge we've received in Srila Prabhupada's books very clearly and strongly in the center of our lives and of our movement, then it won't be on a strong basis. Then things will become shaky. Then we won't get the purity that's required to be Krishna conscious and to spread Krishna consciousness. Another way the books are the basis is even economically. Srila Prabhupada, when he first came to America, came with 40 rupees of non-convertible money, and in other words, he had no money. He came with nothing. But from the early days, he was pushing his disciples to distribute books. When they didn't have any money and they didn't have any clue how they could distribute these books, Srila Prabhupada, he made an order with this Dai Nippon company, but they wouldn't print small orders, so Prabhupada agreed to take big orders. And then he forced all the temples to take more and more magazine. You have to take 500. How can we distribute 500 magazines? They had no idea how they're going to distribute them. Prabhupada said, no, you have to take them and you have to pay for them. And you'll get money also. And they did. In 1968, Prabhupada, when there were about New Vrindavan consisted of about 3 devotees and some wild land and some old shack in the wilds of West Virginia. Srila Prabhupada, I've just been reading this, Srila Prabhupada said there should be 7 temples on 7 hills. You will require millions of dollars. And then millions of dollars, they didn't even think in terms of thousands of dollars, and hardly even hundreds. For the $100, they even noted, the Hayagriva noted that one of his friends visited and gave a $200 donation, which for them at the time, $200, oh, spectacular. So Srila Prabhupada, he knew the value of money. And he wanted to generate it, and he did generate it by this book distribution. You can see many times Srila Prabhupada, in India, people are wondering, where did you get so much money from? From there, we're selling our books every day, $60,000 worth of whatever books, and people could hardly believe it. We ourselves could hardly believe it. That, for instance, there was one book printing, they printed 2 million books in one printing run, 1 million Bhagavad Gitas, and it took 2 trainloads of paper to print the books. They're printed in America. And then after a few months, they had to reprint them all again. And devotees were getting prizes from the printing awards and all this. And they were also, the airport authorities were trying to kick the devotees out, and devotees, they became expert in legal matters so much that even the lawyers respected their opinions, and the devotees, they were so expert in this particular field that even the lawyers would listen to them, what they had to say. They became so expert. So from a bunch of hippies, practically Prabhupada, by pushing this preaching and book distribution, he made devotees expert in all kinds of things, in art, in book production, in book distribution, in legal matters, in all kinds of things. And he generated lots of money, which Prabhupada is very expert in this. He saw, okay, now we want to develop India. India, people are not interested. At that time, people weren't interested. That's why he went to America. But he saw the spark that in India people can become interested, but they're a bit dull at the present time. They need something to to wake them up. So big temples. If there are big temples, that will wake them up. They'll see there's something. At that time, no one was building temples in India. I remember when I first came. The only temples that were being built were Birla temples. And the Birla's company, they built temples, and this way they managed to, because they built it with their own company, and this way they managed to, by getting some tax relief or something like this, instead of spending the money on taxes, they spend the money on temples, something like that. There's some piety there also. And temples would take years and years to build because they were running, anyway, I don't know, some financial arrangement. But there wasn't interest in temples. But Srila Prabhupada recreated that. So Srila Prabhupada had so many amazing plans, and the book distribution was at the heart of it. And of course it wasn't just economic. Srila Prabhupada, he put so much effort personally into printing the books. He wanted the paintings done. He gave the details of how the paintings should be done. He said the paintings will sell the books. You show the paintings and you can sell the books on the basis of that. So here in India now the movement's become well established, and we're building big temples. And it is possible to preach even without emphasizing the books. But we should always remember, because ISKCON has some kind of name, and largely due to the efforts of ISKCON, people of the present generation are interested, many of them are interested in religious life or spiritual life, which they were going away from it by the 1950s and 60s. So it's possible to set oneself up as a preacher and make some followers and this and that. But again, we have to remember the books are the basis. It's not simply if someone has some effusive personality and can gather people around him, but they have to give them the knowledge that's in the books. It's not a matter of setting ourselves up to be some kind of guru, but rather we have to live according to the books and preach according to the books and see that others are also imbibing this knowledge. Srila Prabhupada spoke so much that we want to create a class of brahmanas. So that means they should understand what is in these books. Sometimes he said different things at different times. At one time he said there should be continuous classes going on in the temples, 5 or 6 classes a day. Now we got down to 1 practically in most temples. Srila Prabhupada actually made it 2 the minimum, but there can be more. And not necessarily just for the newer devotees also. They say, well, they have to learn, now we know everything. But these so-called senior devotees, well, we're all very new. We also need to become absorbed in this hearing and chanting. We're talking a lot about books today, but kirtan, that should also... We need so many hours in the day. We need to do so much kirtan, so much study, hearing, and distributing. Now you're on a book distribution, you've been on a book distribution marathon. But you also need a book study marathon, and a kirtan marathon, everything. Yeah. A whole life should be a marathon, just like Srila Prabhupada's life. It's intensely absorbed in, even when he didn't have any movement, when he was in India, he was living in Vrindavan, writing books, going to Delhi, getting them printed, working so hard. There was no one there saying, Jai, and giving him a prize and nothing. No one knew, no one understood. There might have been a few who appreciated to some extent, but he was going on with the spiritual energy of wanting to please his spiritual master and to deliver the suffering people of the world. And he saw this is the means to do it. He got that idea from his guru. He said, I learned I learned the basics of devotional service at home from my father, but the main thing, the special thing I learned from my guru, is what's he going to learn? Already at home, Prabhupada was already steeped in Krishna consciousness from his own father. Then what's he going to get from a guru? He learned from his guru the importance of books. If you ever get money, print books. Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur told him. So he was very enthusiastic, and he himself would study, translate, print, and then as he made disciples, then distributed also. So those who are on book distribution, they also get intelligence, how to do things, how to deal with people. Even materially, it's a great training. The people, they spend so much money to go to these personality development courses. We'll take you out on book distribution. Automatically, you have to learn how to deal with all different people and overcome any shyness or any such thing. Of course, for ladies, shyness is a good quality, and to be brash is not a good quality for anyone. But in preaching, one has to be confident, and that confidence comes from the confidence of knowing that I am charged to act as an instrument in the hands of Srila Prabhupada and the Acharyas. Now, these books are the basis. Srila Prabhupada wrote that in at least 2 letters. There's also a very well-known saying in our movement, books are the basis, preaching is the essence, utility is the principle, and purity is the force, which many devotees think Srila Prabhupada made up this saying, but actually he didn't. We find from one of the transcribed conversations of Srila Prabhupada that it was written in Chinese, and one of Srila Prabhupada's disciples or someone had translated that from Chinese. And they showed it to Prabhupada, and because they thought this very well fits Prabhupada's mission. But Prabhupada accepted it, in as much as we used to have these Sankirtan newsletters. You can't imagine those growing up in the present day, but where everything's on the internet. But we used to have to send our scores, our book distribution results, every week to Los Angeles. How would that be sent? I think telex had started by that time. You don't even know what, can't imagine telex. It's such, at the time it was cutting edge technology, and now it's just forgotten. You type something in and it comes out as ticker tape at the other end, and it seems most primitive now. And then one devotee would compile all the scores, make a newsletter and send it by post to all the temples in the world, and to Srila Prabhupada, wherever he was. And at the top it was written, books are the basis, preaching is the essence, utility is the principle, purity is the force. So, although Srila Prabhupada didn't personally state this, he did state books as the basis. And in various ways, in various of his Bhaktivedanta purports, he did, and letters, he also, maybe not in exactly those words, said that preaching is the essence, but he didn't coin this saying, but he accepted it, because it was there, and on the Sankirtan newsletter every week, and it used to be every week, not every month. And Shrutadev Prabhu was doing that. He was, and it was often quoted in Vyasa Puja offerings to Srila Prabhupada also. So preaching is the essence. Now, Srila Prabhupada, I'll read this. Know for certain that there is no better way to preach Krishna consciousness than through the distribution of my books. So that's very clear, but that doesn't mean that there shouldn't be other forms of preaching also. There's another saying that when Prabhupada wrote to Bhagavan, who was one of the best speakers in our movement, there were some really good speakers, and At one time it almost seemed to be there was a competition, who's the best speaker of all. It became a little mundane, actually. But Bhagavan was one of the best. Hridayananda was one of the best. Harikesh is good. Rameshwar, not so